Yeah, I am originally from Memphis, Tennessee. Um, I have a bunch of degrees and a weird job. So I went to school for my bachelor's in psychology. My research was focused on neuropsych. I didn't know if I wanted to be a doctor, what I wanted to do. I decided I wanted to be involved in policy. So I ended up going to law school. And I have my law degree, my health law focus. I also have a master's in public health because I love being a researcher. I love being a scientist. So I wanted to do both. So that's what happened. And I finished all of that after almost 10 years of grueling education. In 2017, I relocated almost immediately after to Washington, D.C. for an amazing fellowship. I do not state where I work, but
Okay.
I work in public health law and I work in public health research in DC. And I just leave it at that for folks.
So yeah, to keep yourself safe, I'm sure.
Yes, and also just because I want to make it clear that I am always speaking from my own personal perspective. All of my views are my own, and I'm not speaking on behalf of any company, corporation, organization, or government entity. I am just speaking for myself.
But clearly, if you're in public health, you've had a busy couple of years.
Very busy. It's been weird. So, my original training in public health law was in things like quarantine, isolation laws, what happens in a pandemic, vaccination mandates. I was studying and working on projects related to that back in 2016. And like the big outbreak at the time that I had the opportunity to get some insight into was with the Zika virus. Whole
Right.
different can of worms, right? Not affecting people like this. And then graduation came and I had to figure out what I wanted to do. And I said, this really niche thing that I studied that like I was I was the first person at my law school to study this in Memphis, and
Wow.
there's just not that many people in this path. And I said, well, let me see what other fields adjacent I can go into because this stuff about epidemics won't be useful. And enter 2020. So
You must have been negotiating for the big bucks because you had such
not
value.
Not really. I just had so many attorneys who were my mentors, people who had been practicing 10, 15, 20, 30 years, people who were medical professionals suddenly emailing me and saying, do you have guidance on this? I heard that you studied this thing and it's so specific. Can you tell me how does this work? What is this? And so I just gave the information freely because I mean, I didn't go into public health law for money. If I wanted money, I would have been an intellectual property lawyer or sat for the patent bar or something like that. I always tell people that, but I didn't do it for the money. I genuinely care about the being of
I
people.
have an
So.
I have an IP lawyer. Yeah, it's
But
expensive.
yeah.
So where do you see us going over the next year? Like how is this gonna? Where are we gonna? When's the finish line of this whole thing, if ever?
I I have no idea. I have no idea. That's what's so scary. I mean, it's all based upon the behavior of the individual, right? And whether they want to do the ethical thing or the right thing. And unfortunately, we're seeing people not doing the right thing. And we're seeing our leaders not take as much of a stand as they should. I was actually just talking to another creator about this yesterday during a live. And I said, they talk about the Jacobson versus Massachusetts case. It is the seminal public health law case that talks about the constitutionality of vaccine mandates at the state level. And we talk about it. And of course, the people who are anti vaxxers, anti maskers, anti mandate come back and say, well, the federal government can't do anything, but they can. And that's because of the Commerce Clause. Anything that has a significant effect on interstate commerce. And I would say that the spread of this virus across state lines absolutely falls into that category, would
Right.
give the federal government the right to take a more firm stand. And as we've seen in the last week or so, they're not going to. The executive branch is not going to. And it's very disappointing because if there were any time, I mean, that is a very delicate balance, right? Like you don't want somebody just wielding power all over the place, willy nilly. But almost we're creeping up on 1 million dead Americans from this virus. We are seeing infrastructures and just tumbling down. We are seeing the just employment sector, private and public, be affected drastically. Public schools and our hospital system is overwhelmed. And I just don't. I believe there was a projection recently that said that we're getting to the point of this becoming endemic, similar to influenza, and their projections are that we'll reach that point in 2024. And that's so disheartening to think that there's going to be another 2 years.
Conceivably another at least 500,000 dead by then, yeah?
Yeah, I mean,
Because if it's not as bad as the first go around and the vaccines are helping, but not completely eradicating cases. So yeah, you know what? The second day of shutdown, I said, this is going to be worse than the Spanish flu. And I sadly am right.
Yeah,
With all our advances, with all our everything, with all our abundance of bullshit. It's
yeah, I tell people all the time, you know, when they talk about it came out too fast, the vaccine came out too fast. I'm like, no, it didn't. You do not understand vaccine research. And I try to tell people that you talk about our advancements, and that's it. That's exactly it. I say there's two things that hold up vaccine development. It is resources and it is money. And we had so much of both of those things that it just worked well. People don't understand that vaccine trials don't last a long time because you have to wait months and months and months to see side effects from the people who are participating in the research. It's that you have to wait months and months to get enough people recruited to get a proper sample size and get the proper data. And we had a record number of volunteers immediately.
right.
And they don't understand that it's not the time factor. The data is still there. Whether this were a vaccine that took 2 years to develop because we needed to get that many participants versus the time that it actually took. And it's also based on decades of research. I mean, it's just so hard to try to convey this to people and make them understand.
You're missing a word, ignorant people, because
Ignorant people.
what you just said in those two sentences is if you were like smart and you want to know and you want to be part of like a knowledge base, you know, you'll understand what you just said. But if you've already made a decision to be not wanting to play the Democrats' game of, oh, let's live, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's like, I don't know. I look at it as like the real problem is that they're so self-loathing. It's such a personal self-hatred thing that's why they don't care if their families die. It's about, I think it sounds corny, but I think it's about love and not having the love for yourself and love for your fellow man and love for your family members to just let them, oh, if that's going to happen, oh, God is supposed to whatever, that's the Lord, you know, it's no love there.
And it's also this fan behavior of politicians. I have never in my life seen so many people center their personalities around a politician. Never in my life would I do that. Like, you know, the first election I could vote in when I turned 18 was Barack Obama's election. A good chunk of my family is from Chicago. I was married in Chicago, so like lots of ties there. I don't give that much of a damn about Barack Obama. Like, I can be happy about him being the first Black president, and specifically for me as a biracial woman, you know, the first biracial president. Cool. Same thing with Kamala Harris. It's really cool to see representation, but I'm not about to let my family or myself die in the name of these I don't care about them that much because at the end of the day, they're just big deal public servants. And I think people forget that they are serving us. They are here to serve us. And the pedestal that you see some of these politicians being put on by people, it's sad, it's infuriating.
But you know what what it is having worked years ago really within like through the looking glass A-list celebrity and that sycophancy that comes with that. Like when I used to work with Carrie Fisher and when we would people that were Star Wars fanatics, you know, it's like next level how they love these kind of characters that become so important to them in their life. Trump is like that. It's the same sycophancy.
It
It's not that
is.
he
I
didn't
call,
like his politics. I don't even know if they would know what the word politics means. It's just that he fills a void that's the hole that they don't have because they don't have that self-love. That's
it is. I agree. I agree. It's like watching a dystopian version of, the British invasion and people obsessing over the Beatles. It's so
exactly.
strange.
But at
Except
least
we
you
don't
got
get
some
good
good
music out of
music out
it.
of the Beatles. You know what I mean? There was like a reward. There's no reward. It's unbelievable. Especially he gives no rewards to his people. It's not
None.
like, the few 1%ers that benefit from his policies is one thing, but it's like these masses. But the problem is, I mean, I don't know even what you studied in, even like there must have been thousands or millions of people in America during the Spanish flu that refused to vaccinate. And like, what happened to them? Like,
I mean, honestly, if you go back to even that Jacobson case, I mean, they were excluded from societal privileges, which is what we're seeing now, but we're not seeing it in a uniform way. And that brings another issue is people talking about my rights, my rights, my rights, my rights. And I'm like, you don't know what your rights are. And I try to explain this to people all the time. I say it's a very limited set of rights. It's so limited that I couldn't figure out why it wasn't getting across to them. And I think it comes from that idea, that quote that I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen a million times, that says they're so used to being the oppressors that equality to them feels like oppression. And I think that has to be what it is that they are not getting the privileges that they are so used to getting, that they are misinterpreting it as my rights are being taken from me. And so the funny thing is, when you talk about things like the Spanish flu, and obviously there's not as much documentation on this. Well, first of all, I think that the inability for disinformation to spread at a rapid rate, first of all, helped so that vaccination rates were just better for
right.
people. When the polio vaccine came out or the smallpox vaccine came out, there wasn't a platform for everyone to just say whatever they wanted at any time and assert it as the truth. There was a little more vetting going on, and I think that's part of it. And then also, like I said, people were more willing to say, you're not getting these privileges in society. We're not going to deal with you if you're going to bring that around here, because they're watching their children die, their families die, their loved ones die, and they're not going to stand for that. But I I don't know. I
No,
don't
no,
know.
I know it's bewildering. I just think that in spite of the situation that we're all in, we have like the most important election coming up, and I always have to, we have to, it's even harder. This election is going to be harder than the 2021 because it's a midterm. And how are we going to engage the young people who actually don't show up enough? They do. And I believe in Gen Z. And I interviewed this amazing girl yesterday who was one of the people who sat in Washington, D.C. on they were a hunger strike for voting rights. Did you hear about that?
Yes.
So
Yes,
she
that's
was, yeah,
amazing.
yeah, this girl Riley. I mean, so amazing, and lives in West Virginia. This girl is, she has such the potential of being she's so special, to be so committed at such a young age that, she first got herself over to Arizona with um, the first hunger strike was in front of, Cinema's office, and then they decided this wasn't good enough, so they all and so I do have hope that the young people care enough, but we need the numbers. We need the ones that'll go off to college and be like, oh no, it's party instead. Like, it really needs to happen.
Yeah, we have got to make it happen, and I think that in the last few years people have really understood how important midterm elections are, much more so than I think in, at least when I started college, and back in 2008, like I said, that was like the first election I could vote in, and it was like all about the president. And I noticed that there was a shift over time for people to pay more attention about the midterms and to start understanding more about what is actually happening, what matters, because you know, it doesn't end with, you know, a Democrat being in office, right?
Get there.
We need people in Congress who are not going to block every move, who are going to pass laws that actually are going to do something to help Americans. I mean, we've seen so many bills and measures and things just be blocked left and right. And we can't have that anymore. There's no way we can have change without making sure to get more of the right people in office at all stages. Not, it doesn't just matter every 4 years for the president. So if you've seen my videos, you've seen my platform, you see that I am very sharp and very abrasive.
Mhm.
um, which takes people aback when I just come back harshly, and it's not everyone's cup of tea. But I said, you know, they kept saying they liked Donald Trump because he said whatever he thought and he was mean and didn't hold back. I bet I can do a million times better if I do the same thing, but I actually know what I'm talking about.
Right, right, right. Why would you ever
And so
consider you would you ever run for office, you think?
my husband doesn't want me to. I do have, yeah, I have a husband and a 2-year-old son, and so,
Oh
you
wow.
know, they come first. I think we would reassess in some time. You know, I turned 30 last year, and that was when the first conversation came up about, hey, babe, I could run for Senate. And you know, he was like, please don't right now because of just being in the public eye. And already there's so much attention just from the TikTok following that I've garnered. And so he's trying to ease into it. So my family definitely comes first for me, but I will always, like you said, knock on doors and push for other people who are running for office because I'm not special, right? There's so many intelligent people who can do the job. And I don't think that we like everyone needs to be the face of everything. Honestly, I like being the behind the scenes person, which surprises people based on like how my following is with TikTok and everything. But my career is very much behind the scenes. I don't care for um you know, to be the first name published on an article. You know, my boss knows that. I'm like, I don't really care about being the first author or any author. I just need it published. Like, I just care about making sure that the work gets done. And that has always been my goal. So I'm happy for if I see somebody who's a candidate and I really really support them but feel like I could be of some assistance to them. I am perfectly happy to be the person behind the scenes who's researching the regulations, researching the statutes, giving them the info, helping them figure out how to talk to their base and to speak to the issues. I'm happy doing that.
Awesome. Well, that's as important as being the front person, really. And if you think about it, you think Trump knew one shit when he knew his talking nothing. Everyone was doing and he was propping that old smelly thing up, and he would blabber it incoherently, and you know what I mean? Horrible. But
I have had
I do believe that why we were able to take the White House was because of the anger that was out. And I think we need to bring that anger back. Like the people are so burned out now. It's like, I don't want, but we have to get people mad again. And hopefully there'll be enough between now and then to see these lunatics to piss everybody
yes.
off to
I'm going
say,
to tell you, I mean, where I am in DC, right? We're all still angry, especially after the insurrection last year. I mean, this stuff happens in our backyard all the time. And so it gets very, very frustrating. And I'm just thinking, if we could just harness the anger of the leftists and the liberals in DC, kind of spread it, it would probably really push some folks because, again, you know, being a professional here, I'm not anyone special at all. It's very common for all of us. I mean, this is a small little town to have come into contact with people. I have come into contact with people in the Trump administration and witnessed different things in different roles. And it's awful. It's terrible. And we're still mad about it because it feels like he just slipped away and we never really got the justice for the horrible things that were imposed upon us and our fellow man for 4 years.
yeah,
And there's so much damage left behind. I mean, having to still fight disinformation is just it's wild. And if I hear one more person complain about free speech and censorship, I think I
Yeah,
might
you know what? I think the
explode.
First Amendment could use a little tweaking myself, to be honest, because that
It
could be.
doesn't even apply. It doesn't even apply. They whine about it, and I'm like, you don't have a. You know, it's funny because we talked about when pandemics happened back in the, the olden days. And they talk about, you want to censor me, and you guys don't want us to speak. And I'm sitting here like, do you think back in 1905 you could just walk up to the editor of the major newspaper and say, hey, publish this because I think it and I believe it, and you got to put this in right now? Like, no, it's never worked that way. They claim an oppression that doesn't exist because they
Mhm.
actually have more of a voice than they have ever had in history. And I can't make heads or tails of it. So
No, because these people are just ignorant and they don't love themselves. And there is like that's like not a winning combination. And for me, which it hits a certain note for me because my mom survived Dachau. And when they used like comparing themselves to like, oh, this is like the Holocaust. I mean, that's, honey, it it's infuriating. It's a lot of what drives me to know that I don't want to live in a fascist society, because I
yeah,
know firsthand since I'm 3 years old what that means, you know,
it,
and I'm not going to let these ignoramuses kind of brush it along and use it as like a talking point, you know. It's just not okay, you know, like we who are like the truly oppressed, you know what I mean? Which are,
yeah.
and just, I may be white, but I feel like I've been on the receiving end of anti-Semitism since I'm a
I
kid,
was gonna
you know?
say, you say, well, I'm white, but anti-Semitism is frightening, and
Right.
the Holocaust was a genocide. I mean, that's not
Frightening.
anything to do with play.
No, I mean, so I feel like the Native Americans, people of color, Jews that I'm first generation, you know what I mean? We
Mhm.
know what it's like to then look at these white pieces of shit and who are acting like they're the ones that are being put upon, when they're the ones now threatening violence. They're the ones like, it's just, no, you know what I mean? And I think that we have to be ready for the worst. It's weird.
I agree. I agree, and I actually stitched a video that showed a woman who was sewing her own Star of David onto her work jacket that said unvaccinated on it. And I said in the video, the interesting thing is she put that on her own jacket. No one is forcing it on them. And I said a light bulb moment went off for me
Interesting.
where I realized it's because they've been the oppressors for so long. They think oppression is a choice, and they've now chosen to try to benefit from it and change the narrative because that's all they've ever known. They've never known real oppression. They only know how to be the oppressor. So they think it's a choice. And I don't even know what to do with those people. I have no patience for them. I don't have any sympathy for them because it's so far beyond human decency and what is ethical behavior that
Yeah.
I don't have
There's a
patience.
there's a TikTok that started going around. I saw it anyway yesterday. A woman shaved her head and said, "Did you see that one?"
I
Like,
think she put a filter on to make her look bald. I don't know that I think she
oh,
used
and
a
she
filter,
did. It's a filter.
and it was duetted by
The guy who
someone
survived
who
it.
survived a concentration camp.
Yeah.
And when he ended it with saying, "Have the day you deserve," the bite in that phrase, and to see that survivor just confront her like that was a really poignant moment. And I was very proud of him, and I felt like I was rooting on my grandfather or something.
Right.
Like
No,
I was
no.
like,
I
"You're my
mean,
grandfather out there."
don't fuck with the survivors. They cut you, man.
Like
You
she
know.
better not respond to him, or I am coming for her. Like he is my grandpa.
Yeah. I mean, you feel there's an, yeah. I mean, I of course get that 100%. That Jenna Ryan, that idiot that's going to jail, that
Yeah.
one, you know, the pretentious thing. She
Yes.
actually was. It was an article today. I don't know why. She's saying, comparing herself to the Holocaust, the way she's being, you know, treated. And I'm thinking, you should only get treated that way. I wish that on you. I wish that you get what you're asking for. You know
Uh
what I
huh.
mean?
because
It's
they don't know what they're asking for, or they do and they're pretending like they don't. But yes, it's like, is that really what you want? Because not being allowed to go to the movies, eat in a restaurant, babe, that's not it. That's not the thing. Like, they talk about like, oh, well, it's not fair, because of how society is. I'm like, you can order Uber Eats to your door. You have grocery pickup. There are so many things to cater to and support unvaccinated people. Then they still think that they are somehow in this group of just severely oppressed folks. And I'm looking here like, you have so much power because you're holding the rest of us hostage,
right.
you know,
Yeah.
causing these mutations and these variants. And they keep wanting to be ignorant to it, change the science, keeps, just spewing talking points that have been debunked over and over and over again. And at a certain point, I said, I can't argue with these people. And so, love it or hate it, it seems to work. My platform, and when they come on and say comments, I just insult them to the point that they're embarrassed and they delete their accounts or their comments and don't want to speak again. And I made a video and I said, a lot of people ask me why I confront these people, that I'm not going to change their minds. I said, I'm not trying to change their minds. I'm trying to shame them into silence, because if nothing else, I can stop them from spreading their harmful rhetoric, because that is the point I'm like, we are not at the point of prevention. We're at tertiary care at this point. Like, in healthcare terms, like, I'm just trying to
Listen,
stop the spread.
whatever, you have to try everything until something might work. But it's interesting because now this particular Omicron is bringing up so many questions that
Yes.
it's giving them more power to think that they're right to have questioned it from the beginning. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's like a little fresh bummer,
And except they're the ones dying from it. And I can't figure, like I said, like you said, they must not love themselves or their families. And I think that especially when I see parents who are refusing the vaccine, or refusing to get their children vaccinated, or refusing to even, because I do, to an extent, understand people saying, well, I got this vaccine, but I'm not sure about my kid. So there's people who are homeschooling their children, or, making sure that they wear their masks when they go out, but they're just sending their kids out in the wild like none of this exists. And as a parent, I cannot understand why you wouldn't do. Why are you picking Donald Trump over your child? I
my
even if you hate yourself, and it just seems like every animal in the wild, you're supposed to protect your young, and these people are not doing it. And I'm just wondering where evolution went wrong, because you should
you
be
know
fighting to
it
protect your children.
it's a culture, you know what, it's of course it's never one thing that's always the best answer for anything, because it wasn't one particular thing, but it's the culmination of our culture becoming so all about aspiration versus inspiration. It's so much about, like, the wanting to strive towards having more, like, designer labels and affluence, and just, the Kardashianizing of America was no
Yeah,
big bargain either, and there's just a whole, I don't know, confluence of horror. I don't, it's just bad. But again, it always boils down to me and everyone that I talk to is that, remember, you have a responsibility to get as many people to know how important it is to vote, because it's going to get worse if we don't. At least
yeah.
we can stopgap some of this stuff by just
Right.
working our faces off, and living up to the best selves that we at least can be. I don't know. I know it sounds sort of, I always sound corny about it, but I refuse to hand in the towel. It's 11 months away. And
I know.
how many people freaking don't decide to the last? I'm so sick of those, the ones, the undecideds. Like that whole word is like a curse. You know what I mean? It's like, you should have decided 4 years ago, by the way. You know what I mean? Yeah.
It makes no sense. And I also get frustrated by the folks who, as someone who very much leans leftist more than leans liberal, right? So there's seldom candidates that are 100% perfect for me, and others. But it frustrates me to see other people in the same group who are just like, well, I'm not going to vote at all because X, Y, and Z reason. And I'm like, you're not going to change the party system. You're not going to change any of this by being inactive. You
Right.
know, we have seen that people with these ideals can run on a Democrat ticket as well. I mean, I don't want to keep holding her up as just like the poster child, but AOC, everybody sees AOC out there putting in work, and she's won 2 elections, you know, like it is very possible to go out and support and push for your candidates so that we can get stuff done. And I don't like that division that I see within this end of the political spectrum, right? It's frustrating, and I get frustrated as well, and I tell people all the time, like um I don't belong to a party just because it's been my preference not to identify with any political party, but I've always voted blue. I've always voted Democrat. Why
Right.
wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I vote um even if it's not 100% someone who I feel like covers everything I want? Why would I just sit back and do nothing and then say, well, you're not perfect, so let's just let the worst possible option win instead?
Yeah, no, it's not okay. And all those people that made it so that Hillary won because of that apathy is just where would America just if I would love if I had one wish, it would be to go into the future of the Hillary Clinton presidents winning, you know, and to see where we are as
I just want
opposed
to see it
yeah, wouldn't that
because
be
I had to start my career under the Trump administration,
wow.
and I don't know what it would have been like otherwise. But I do tell people, I'm like, you know what? The fact that I started my career in the worst of the worst, at least has given me some perspective and some resilience, so that I know I can continue. Because
Wow.
that was a rough 4 years. That was a rough. It was a hard time.
Oh my God,
Again,
all the stuff that was going on in that industry of yours? Whoa.
I'm I am not speaking on behalf of the U.S. government, and I do not am not in this position now. But when I graduated, right 2 weeks before the inauguration, I was selected as a presidential management fellow. That was the fellowship I got to come to DC,
Wow, nice. Yeah.
and it's a very wonderful, prestigious honor that thousands upon thousands of people apply, and they only pick a few hundred. And I was so excited. But I was more excited when I applied in October before the election happened. And then it happened. And then I moved here, and I got to tell you, we even had a training at the White House and met with some of his advisors, and it just turned our stomachs. You know,
God.
no fellow was pleased about
Wow.
the experience completely. But I just remember, I always tell this story. I shook the hand outside of the White House security checkpoint. I met a man, and he said, "What are you here for?" And I told him I'm one of the presidential management fellows. And he said, "What an honor." He said, "I know that there's clouds and darkness right now, but the sun will come back up, and we will need people like you. Please stay. Please
Oh.
hold on. Please keep working." And I said, "Thank you." And I said, "What do you do?" He said, "I rescue hostages overseas." I said, "What?" This man deals with hostage situations of international terrorists, and he is disgusted and frightened and shocked. So that really resonated with me about, like, wow, this is not like any other time. And I got to work with people who have worked all the way going back to like Jimmy Carter, and they said they've never ever experienced anything like this. Every day I just kept hearing over and over again, we've never dealt with this before. We never dealt with this before. Tom Price, you know, gets booted out because he steals $1 million in taxpayer funds on private jets. We've never dealt with this before. The VA secretary was holed up in his office with armed guards out in front in a public servant building, and they were like, we've never dealt with this before. And all these rumors going around of just the crazy things that were happening in people's offices and what they were seeing and what they were hearing. And it was just so, I mean, the craziest was hearing that IT people had come to the agency where I was placed and changed the TV channels to Fox News and locked them on President Trump's direction. Why would you waste resources for that? I there was just so much to
Yeah,
witness in those.
we, you know, you know what? And the reality is we survived to be able to make sure that we don't have to survive that again.
Absolutely not.
That is the mission, and I think we just have to stay pissed. I think we have to stay pissed until November 8th. And
You need to make shirts that say that. Stay pissed until November 8th. I would buy it and wear it. I would, absolutely. Make a shirt. I will buy it. I will tell everyone I know to buy it and wear it. It would be beautiful.
All right. Take care. Happy New Year and lots of good things for you and your family.
Thanks. You too.